What is up, everyone? Thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Alan Sakyan, and this is another episode of 2030 Podcast Facebook Live. I am coming at you with a pretty cool topic. I have really gotten deep into this just recently, and I'm a big fan of this word. The word is epistemology. I've known about it for a few years, but I've really been recently getting into a deep dive of it. It's a very philosophical, conversational topic. Epistemology is the study of what's justified truth versus what's just belief. Now, this is going to become a huge topic of discussion in our future. This basically boils down to subjectivity versus objectivity. Now, I'm going to go through a few examples. I'm going to talk about why I think this is very important. I'm going to go through a bunch of examples about how the world is so chaotically filled with it and how it makes it tough for us to find meaning and purpose in life because of how much chaos there is. And especially in the world of so much data that's being sprayed out of a fire hose onto the internet and into the hands of people. So again, thank you so much for tuning in. Let's hope that this catalyzes some interesting philosophical discussions. So I just wrote this up on one of my posts. You can go check it out on my Facebook wall. This post that I wrote was in answer to my friends talking about epistemological chaos. And I have it written up here in my note as well. I'm going to talk about it a little bit. And so the idea, first of all, is that because I wrote up what was in the inventory of my mind onto a Facebook post, into a Word document, what it did is it helped me further solidify and ossify my thoughts and make them more meaningful and organized. And those neurons fired together. Now they're wiring together. I'm going to learn them better over time and teach them to other people over time. So I really recommend that as a creator to go and structure your thoughts and teach them to other people, etc. So I really hope that we can make this contribution topic stronger. So here's my take on this. Epistemology has everything to do with our individual daily perceptions as well as overall societal dynamics of how we view the world. Now, because of that, this directly affects our ability to parse life, to find the things that get us out of bed in the morning with the fuck yeah, I'm Jack to make the world a better place. As Horseman once famously said, be ashamed to die until you have won some victory for humanity. And it's so difficult in today's world to win those victories for humanity because there is so much chaos out there in terms of what is justified truth versus what's just belief. How do I wake up in the morning and find meaning and purpose where it's so hard to filter through all of the content that some people call vapid, meaningless, some people call it entertaining, and some people call all the content educational. How do we find and highlight and rank up that educational content? So this is also something that I want to touch base on in this next paragraph, which is that, well, let's go through some of these examples. So let's take this ranking system into account. It's ranking epistemological points on a scale of 1 to 10. So 1 is going to be the most belief-driven, and 10 is going to be the most justified truth possible, okay? So let's take the flat earth example into account. So it's good to have people voicing their opposition to status quo bias. Like, how the fuck do you know that the earth isn't flat? You've never actually seen it from space with your own eyes. And so these are great philosophical points to talk about. But then scientifically literate communities will chant in unison, look at the empirical data we've collected over the last dozens of years, all of the photos of Earth from space, talk to the astronauts that have been to space and seen around Earth, and look at the formation of stars and planets in space-time, so that they're all circles. So now if we were to rank this based on 1 being just belief-driven statement versus 10 being justified truth, I'd rank this above example about the earth being round as an 8, because it's really high up there. So on the opposite, it would be the earth being flat somewhere around a 2. It's very, very, very belief-driven versus the earth being round is very objectively fact-driven. So that idea about propelling a global consciousness to agree on this fact is truly important. I'm going to go through a few more examples of this. So I want to move on to a much lower number. So this example is kind of what I talked about in the first paragraph, which is how to pass your free time on the internet. So this, in my opinion, is a 2 on the scale of justified truth versus belief. It's very difficult to say that certain things are going to make you smarter, certain things are going to make you more well-rounded or have a higher IQ and EQ by surfing those things online versus surfing other things. And nobody wants to have this conversation. Very, very few people do. Why do people not want to have this conversation? Well, because it hurts. It hurts emotionally when somebody tells you, hey, the content that you're watching is just not that enlightening. You should be watching more enlightening content. That's a very, people say, a negative thing or a degrading thing to tell people, but the reality is that we need to start having a conversation about these systems so that we're not just letting the fire hose of data spew forever randomly out of the humans' minds onto the internet, but that we at least start tailoring content that is educational to more viewers, to more eyeballs, and deciding on that as a civilization what we think is more intelligent. Now, so it's taboo. It's very taboo. Nobody wants to feel like shit for watching a cat video while your friend Mary is watching Tony Robbins motivate the living fuck out of her. So my argument is that we need to have open conversations about the quality of time that we pass on the internet, and we should have open conversations about this, and we need to hold the quality of content that producers are making to a societal standard and societal scale, at least, so that way we're determining whether or not producers and creators are making great things or producers and creators are making not so great things. And so we can do things like label that cat video with a 2. You can label the cat video with a 2. It's just straight up belief. None of it is objective truth or justifiable truth. Versus the Tony Robbins motivational video, well, he's impacted so many people in so many great ways that have went on to not commit suicide or achieve their dreams or what have you. Well, that is closer to an 8 on the scale. So that content, when you get uplifted further by investing your time on the internet watching that content. One needs to consciously wrap their mind really think. Like when I sit down at my computer, when I click open content that's not as enlightening, I am not advancing my mind as much as I could be if I was opening content that was more enlightening. We really need to metacognize that and incentivize and reward that and talk about that as a civilization so we can have a more intelligent democracy instead of a birthright democracy. You are not just gifted the right to vote. Period. You must read and educate yourself about both sides of the issue and have discourse with other people before being able to cast a ballot. This is a crucial understanding of what Socrates passed down to us. You don't want somebody that has never operated a boat to travel you across the sea. You want somebody that has read everything and experienced it to travel you across the sea. It's the same thing with operating a democracy. So, again, philosophical wisdom passed down for thousands of years. We really need to tune into that and tune into ourselves in the way that we learn here. So it's so crucial that we openly talk about these different forms of content, educational content versus entertaining content versus vapid content. What are the differences between them? How do they contribute to societal dynamics, especially of how people are unable to find what they're passionate about because they end up going and working somewhere 9 to 5 and coming home and watching vapid content or entertaining content. But if they watch a little more educational and enlightening content, they might actually find their self-actualization there and go and start fueling that with more time and more passion and more resources until they actually became passionate about that and not their 9 to 5. how cool would it be to get civilization trying this sort of a system? Let's actually converse about an epistemological chaos ranking system of justified truth versus just belief on educational content. So let's move back to an even higher number. So let's talk about what does it look like to have a 10 on the epistemological chaos scale. So a 10 on the epistemological chaos scale would be something along the lines of H2O. The chemical formula for water is H2O. That's as close as we can get to a 10 on the justifiable truth. For 1,000 years, it's not going to be reversed. And if it ever does get reversed, our minds are going to be absolutely blown. Same thing with gravity being 9.8 meters per second squared at the surface of the Earth. And that's just, again, something that's been proven. It's empirical evidence, been proven thousands and millions of times, and has not changed. So because of that, those are as close to 10s as we can get. We need to propel civilization to focus more on these objective truths, focus more on the epistemological chaos and sorting through all of this mess to get these objective truths and share them with all 7.5 billion subjective perspectives so we can have some objective truth on this planet. So, of course, we need to enable artists and poets and painters, etc., to help disseminate these sort of epistemological truths to the masses in relatable ways. Epistemology is not only for objective truth-loving scientists, it's also for artists and creators and doers and painters and sculptors, and you know it. So let's move on to one that's like a 5. So something on the scale that's both not really epistemologically factual and objective versus just justified or just belief and not justified truth. So right in the middle, like a 5, would be something like how water started on Earth. Because we really don't know if water started on Earth from Earth being frozen and then being melted down by the sun, or if water started through a meteor coming and hitting the Earth and then that contained frozen water on it. So we don't know that, and we might not ever know the answer to that. So that's a straight up 5 right in the middle of the scale. So now let's move on to another one. So, or actually this is closer, this is basically the ending of this thought. So there are trillions and trillions more examples of these. Remember this 1 to 10 scale, 1 being complete belief and 10 being objective, justified truth. So highly subjective versus highly objective. Remember, highly objective things are gravity and H2O. Highly subjective things are things like for example, like a cat video being productive to your education, or things like the Earth being flat. Again, a very subjective thing, versus the Earth being round is a much more objective thing. So we really need to filter through this noise and find signal in the data, fire hose spewing into the world. And we need to brand content with this in a sort of way that might be education per minute. Enlightenment per minute. Think about those words. Education per minute. Enlightenment per minute. When you find content online that has a very high enlightenment per minute, or an EPM, enlightenment per minute rating, then that content is going to get you further in life. It's going to give you more knowledge, going to make you a better communicator, make you more interdisciplinary, and you're going to want to focus on that rather than a cat video that has a very low enlightenment per minute rating. So it's just important to talk about these things and to open up this educational ranking system of content, because otherwise we just think that YouTube and think that Facebook and Google and all of them are just great, and think that humans are just great and we're just going to be fine with this. We're status quo bias. No, we got to make shit better. So especially for education. So this is a good one. So when I get distracted, it would be nice if a friend or an AI would attempt to guide me back to my more meaningful work so I don't get lost in the noise, especially if I can see the direct immediate incentive of focusing on the signal as soon as possible and focusing my attention for sustained periods of time to execute this write-up. So like, for example, this write-up took me about an hour to go through and do, and now I'm going through this podcast and video. Now because that took me an hour to do, I sustain my attention. I did not get distracted during that time. And if I did get distracted during that time, it would be really nice to have an AI or a friend or something be like, Alan, hone in on this. There's so much beauty if you focus on this, and don't click on Reddit or don't go to your messenger and respond to people right now, but focus on this. So that could be interesting to have in the future. And let's let's consider this as challenging the status quo for content and for content creators and for content consumers and for the education system online and for this never-ending spewing hose of data online. We gotta hone in on what is filter through and parse through this epistemological chaos. So literally, a Tony Robbins video will show up as a 9 on the EPM enlightenment per minute or on that ranking scale, and cat video is going to show up as a 1, and then you decide what you want to do. So, guys, thank you for tuning in. This has been another 2030 podcast and Facebook Live and YouTube stream. I will be posting this all online. Visit me on my Patreon page. I just launched that up. I'm going to be creating content like this much more frequently. Your support drastically helps me invest more time into making this content better and reaching more people with it. So, again, this was on epistemological chaos and honing in on justified truth. And if this has made a profound impact on you, please share, please retweet, please post, please subscribe, and share this with people. We would love to catalyze a better world together. So again, thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys soon.